September 16, 1970. Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, London. 11 p.m. The second set was starting. Eric Burdon and War took the stage. The crowd, typical London jazz audience, tried to act cool. Unimpressed. They'd seen it all. Then someone in the crowd stood up. White Stratocaster in hand. Eyes wide. Ready, War guitarist Howard Scott saw him first. His eyes were just so white and wide open. He was ready to play. It was Jimi Hendrix. Nobody knew this would be the last time Jimi Hendrix ever played guitar in public. 48 hours later, he'd be dead. This is the story of Jimi's final jam. The night he just wanted to play blues with an old friend. The bootleg recording that almost disappeared forever. And the tragic ending nobody saw coming. September 12, 1970. For days earlier, Hyde Park, London, Eric Burdon and War played a free concert. Burdon told the crowd, "Make sure you come to Ronnie Scott's next week. We're going to freak all those jazz freaks out of the place." In the audience, Jimi Hendrix, he'd just returned from Germany. The Fehmarn Festival. September 6th. His last official concert. A disaster, rain, mud, violence. German Hells Angels attacking fans. Billy Cox, his bassist, had a mental breakdown, possibly drug-induced. The band fell apart. Jimi canceled the rest of the European tour. Flew back to London with Mitch Mitchell, his drummer. He was exhausted, depressed, uncertain about his future. But when he heard Eric Burdon announce the Ronnie Scott shows, something sparked. Eric Burdon, old friend from the Animals days. House of the Rising Sun. They'd known each other since 1966. Jimi's arrival in London, now Eric had a new band. War. Latin-influenced funk rock from California. Spill the Wine had been a hit. They were hot, and they were playing Ronnie Scott's. The legendary jazz club in Soho. Miles Davis played there. Nina Simone. Chet Baker. The best. Jimi wanted to jam. September 15, 1970. Tuesday night, Jimi showed up at Ronnie Scott's. Guitar in hand. Ready to play. Eric Burdon saw him walk in, and immediately knew something was wrong. He was well out of it. Wobbling too much to play. Jimi was drunk. Or high. Or both. Barely standing. Eric made a decision. Come back tomorrow night. Jimi nodded. Left. Took his guitar with him. Eric didn't know if he'd see him again. September 16, 1970. Wednesday. The next day, Jimi spent time with people who would later claim they were the last to see him. Former manager Chaz Chandler said Jimi showed up at his apartment. Asked him to produce his next record. Wanted to get back to basics. Eric Clapton claimed he spotted Jimi at Sly and the Family Stones concert at the Lyceum Ballroom, but couldn't get close enough to talk. Girlfriend Monika Dannemann said Jimi spent the afternoon with her. They were making marriage plans, she claimed. Later that evening, Jimi met up with Stella Douglas and Alvinia Bridges, friends of Monika's. Stella confirmed Monika's story. Added that Jimi mentioned marriage. Then the three of them headed to Ronnie Scott's. Around 10:30 p.m., Jimi was carrying his white Stratocaster, the same guitar he'd played at Woodstock, Ronnie Scott's. 11 p.m. Second set. The club was packed. London jazz crowd. Cool. Sophisticated. Hard to impress. Eric Burdon and War were mid-set. Jamming. Building energy. Then Jimi walked in. He sat at a table to the left of the stage. With Angie Burdon, Eric's wife. His white Strat resting beside him. The crowd noticed. Whispers spread. Is that Jimi Hendrix? Eric saw him from the stage. Healthier than last night. Present. Focused. War started playing Mother Earth. Memphis Slim Blues Standard. Hardcore. Raw. Eric leaned into the microphone. We have a special guest tonight. The crowd erupted. Jimi stood up. Grabbed his guitar. Walked to the stage. Howard Scott, War's guitarist, watched him approach. I noticed his eyes. Wide open. White that he was ready. Jimi plugged in. No preamble. No announcement. Just started playing. What happened next became legend. But let's understand what War was at this moment. Eric Burdon and War had just released their debut album. Spill the Wine was a hit. They were one of the hottest bands in London. On fire. War wasn't a traditional rock band. They were multi-ethnic, multiracial, Latin rhythms, funk grooves, jazz influences. 7 members. Eric Burdon, vocals. Howard Scott, guitar. Dee Allen, percussion. Harold Brown, drums. B.B. Dickerson, bass. Lonnie Jordan, organ and piano. Charles Miller, saxophone and flute. Lee Oscar, harmonica. Their sound was massive. Layered. Complex. More Miles Davis than Led Zeppelin. And they were fearless. Young. Confident. When Jimi walked on stage, they didn't freeze. They didn't defer. They held their ground. War laid down the groove for Mother Earth. Heavy. Funky. Latin-influenced rhythms mixing with blues. Jimi locked in immediately. Not showing off. Not flashy. Just playing. Howard Scott later recalled the moment in vivid detail. I noticed his eyes. Wide open. So white. He was ready to play. We started jamming Mother Earth. This hardcore blues. Memphis Slim's song. And Jimi lit into a guitar solo. Me and Jimi were just cutting the place up. Tearing it up. Back and forth. This wasn't Jimi dominating. This was a conversation. Two guitarists trading phrases. Building off each other. Howard Scott. Having Hendrix on stage made me play better than I ever had before. That's the power of Jimi. Even in his final hours. Even exhausted and uncertain. He elevated everyone around him. The London jazz crowd. The ones Eric Burdon had promised to freak out. Stopped trying to act cool. They stood. Cheered. Hollered at the stage. Applauded between solos. This wasn't typical Jimi Hendrix N.O. wild theatrics. No feedback explosions. No guitar behind the back. No playing with his teeth. Just pure, emotional blues. Lyrical. Expressive. Fitting perfectly with War's jazz-tinged jam. Filmmaker Oliver Murray, who later remastered the recording for his documentary. It's unmistakably Jimi from the moment he takes the stage. His touch and tone is unique to this day, even after hordes of players have tried to replicate it. It's so lyrical. It fits right in with the colorful, jazz-tinged jam that Eric Burdon and War are laying on. Jimi wasn't trying to dominate. He was supporting, collaborating, playing rhythm in the background, adding texture. Near the end of Mother Earth, after maybe 20 minutes of jamming, Jimi stepped back, unplugged, left the stage, returned to his seat with Monika. Sat down, seemed content to just watch. Eric Burdon saw him leaving, grabbed the microphone. Come on, Jimi. One more. The crowd erupted, chanting, calling him back. Jimi smiled, stood up, returned to the stage. They launched into Tobacco Road. John D. Loudermilk's 1960 folk blues standard. War played it at triple time. Fast, aggressive, powerful. Jimi kept up. Not pushing, not overwhelming. Just adding color, emotion, depth. Eric Burdon later wrote in his autobiography, "Don't let me be misunderstood, there was a crack in the air. I introduced Jimi to the audience. The typical London jazz crowd tried to show indifference as he took the stage, but a ripple of applause greeted the greatest guitar player in the world. The guys in War held their ground as we launched into a triple-time version of Tobacco Road. Having Hendrix on stage made Howard Scott play better than he ever had before. We slid into Mother Earth, a beautiful blues written by Memphis Slim that we ended the set with a burning jam. Jimi was flying. And then it was over. Howard Scott, decades later, still emotional. That night at Ronnie's, my feet weren't touching the ground. It was magical. I'll never forget it. But here's what's haunting about this performance. Jimi was different. Usually, Jimi commanded stages, dominated them, became the center of attention. Not tonight. Tonight, he was subdued, reluctant, according to some witnesses, content to play in the background. Why? Was he exhausted from the Germany disaster? Depressed about his career? Uncertain about his future? Or did he just want to play music? Without pressure, without expectation, just jam with old friends? We'll never know. What we do know, this was the last time Jimi Hendrix played guitar in public. The recording almost disappeared. And the story of how it survived is remarkable. Bill Baker, 20 years old, West London resident, massive fan of Eric Burdon and War that he'd first heard Spill the Wine while on holiday in Italy that summer. It blew him away. When he returned to England, he learned War was touring with Eric Burdon, that he missed the Isle of Wight festival by a week. Disappointed. Then a friend mentioned the free Hyde Park concert on September 12. Bill went. Stood in the crowd. Watched Eric Burdon tell the audience to come to Ronnie Scott's. Freak all those jazz freaks out. Bill decided he had to be there. Chose Wednesday, September 16. He brought his recording equipment. Sony TC-100A portable cassette recorder. Not professional gear. Just a fan's equipment. Philips C90 cassette tape. Sony handheld dynamic microphone. Simple setup that he arrived early. Got a good seat. Set up his recorder. The first set started. War played Gun, Paint It Black, Medley, Mystery Train. Bill recorded it all, then the second set. Around 11 p.m., Bill was sitting with a girl. Mid-set, she nudged him. Look, Jimi Hendrix and Eric's wife. Bill hadn't seen him enter. But there was Jimi, sitting at a table to the left of the stage. White Stratocaster beside him. Bill kept recording. You can hear Eric invite Jimi up. We have a special guest. Jimi got up, played Mother Earth with the band. His white Strat cutting through. Near the end of the song, Jimi left the stage. Went back to sit with Monika Dannemann, his girlfriend. On the tape, you can hear Eric asking him to come back. Jimi returned. They played Tobacco Road. Bill's tape side ran out shortly after the song started. He flipped it. Re-recorded over the beginning of the first set. Captured the rest. After the show ended, Jimi hung around. Didn't rush off. Sat at a table. Bill went over. Talked to him. Jimi had a pint glass in front of him. Not beer, white wine. He offered some to Bill. Bill accepted. They chatted briefly. Jimi was friendly. Relaxed. Not in a hurry. Bill went home. Put the cassette away. Proud of his recording, but not thinking it was historic. 2 days later, Friday the 18th, Bill went back to Eric Burdon's hotel. He'd made a copy of the tape for Jerry Goldstein, War's manager. Bill went to the upper floor lobby. Found Jerry, Eric, Eric's parents, Zoot money. Others. He gave Jerry the tape copy. Jerry gave him £20 for it. They talked for a while. When Bill left, he took the lift down to the ground floor. The doors opened. A group of people standing there. Some of them crying. Bill recognized them. Girls who'd been with Eric earlier. Bill asked what was wrong. Nobody answered. They just got in the lift, crying. Bill took the tube home. Confused. Worried. That evening, he bought the evening paper. Headline, Jimi Hendrix dead. Bill froze. Realized what he had. The last recording. Hours before Jimi's death. For years, Bill gave copies to friends. One of those copies, degraded, nth generation, leaked into the bootleg market. Poor quality. Hissy. Barely listenable. But Hendrix collectors treasured it. The final performance. Most people assumed a band member had made it. Or War's management. Nobody knew about Bill Baker. In the mid-1970s, Bill approached the BBC. Tried to release the recording officially. The BBC wasn't interested. Bill put the master cassette away. Kept it safe. Made a few reel-to-reel copies for himself in the 70s, but the master, the original cassette, stayed with him. Hidden. Private. Until 2010. Then in 2010, Bill came forward. With his master cassette. The original. Filmmaker Oliver Murray was making a documentary about Ronnie Scott's. He needed that recording. His archive producer tracked Bill down. Like an old-school detective, going from one lead to the next. It took months to convince Bill. To prove they'd handle it right. Treat it with respect. Finally, Bill agreed. Handed over the master tape. Murray's team remastered it. Cleaned it up. Made it sound almost as fresh as that night in 1970. The result. Stunning audio. You can hear Jimi's tone. His touch. His phrasing. You can hear the crowd reacting. Eric Burdon introducing him. War's groove locking in. And you can hear Jimi. Relaxed. Present. Just playing blues. Howard Scott, War's guitarist, learned of Jimi's death the next night. The next night, we got word that after the set, Jimi had died. It was a terrible thought right there. I was the last guitarist to play with him. For the rest of his life, Howard carried that weight. That honor. That tragedy. He was the last guitarist to jam with Jimi Hendrix. September 17 to 18, 1970. The hours between the jam and Jimi's death are murky. Monika Dannemann's story changed multiple times. Contradictions. Gaps. What's known. Jimi attended a party hosted by Pete Cameron. Business problems. Took at least one amphetamine tablet. Around 1:45 a.m., Monika drove him back. They argued. She wouldn't leave him alone at the party. At the Samarkand Hotel, Monika's apartment. Jimi took Vesperax sleeping tablets. 18 times the recommended dose. He choked on his own vomit. Died of asphyxia while intoxicated with barbiturates. Monika called Eric Burdon first. Not an ambulance. Eric told her. He's just stoned. Pour coffee down his face. Slap him around. Wake him up. Eric went back to bed. Later, alarm bells rang in his head. He called back. Too late. Ambulance arrived. Jimi was already dead. Pronounced dead at 12:45 p.m. Friday, September 18, 1970 at age 27. The last recording, Bill Baker's tape, became part of the documentary Ronnie's, released in 2022 to You Can Hear It. Jimi's final public performance. Mother Earth and Tobacco Road. His tone is unmistakable, even without the showmanship, even without the flash that it's pure Jimi. Lyrical, emotional, present, and heartbreaking. Because 48 hours later, he was gone. Eric Burdon carried guilt for years. Should he have realized Jimi was in trouble? Should he have helped more? Howard Scott carried the honor and the weight. Last guitarist to play with Jimi, Bill Baker carried the recording. The document of history. The final public moment. And the world lost the greatest electric guitarist who ever lived. September 16, 1970. Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club. Jimi Hendrix just wanted a jam, no pressure. No expectations. Just blues. Just music. He played Mother Earth and Tobacco Road. Supported his friends. Made the crowd cheer. Then he went home. 2 days later, he was dead. That's the story of Jimi's last jam. Not a grand finale. Not a spectacular farewell. Just a guy playing guitar with friends in a small club. The way it started. The way it should have continued, but didn't.